Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here today. It's my honor to be serving as the mayor of this incredible city, and I really couldn't be prouder of all the wonderful things we've been accomplishing over the past several years. This is my 8th year on council, and I guess I'm the old person on council because I think everyone else is on the newer side. But it's really wonderful that we have such a great camaraderie among us. So I'm going to share a little bit about what's going on with the city of Punta Gorda, and if I trip and fall, it's John's fault because I don't wear heels anymore because 26 years in Florida wearing flip-flops has done nothing for my heel or for my feet. So I apologize in advance if I trip and fall. Here's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in a very short period of time, and I'm going to talk rather fast, so bear with me, but there's a lot of information to share to update you on various things happening around the city. So, as you already have been introduced to all the council members, we have 5 districts in the city of Punta Gorda, and each council member is appointed or elected from their district that they live in. However, that is the only thing that is district specific. We are elected at large, and we serve the entire community as a whole. And our city manager oversees the entire staff of the city of Punta Gorda. All department heads report directly to him, and then employees within each department report to the department head accordingly. So everyone in the city staff reports directly to the city manager or indirectly to the city manager. We have the good fortune of living in a community where our tax base is relatively low compared to other communities around us. Our tax rate for, if you can see by this chart, based on a $250,000 taxable value, we are very low on the totem pole as far as how much we have to charge our residents for taxes based on other communities around us. So we're 3rd out of 8 in the top 8 communities around Southwest Florida. We have an ad valorem tax rate, millage rate that is assessed each year. We have been fortunate that we have a wonderful city manager who has an extremely proactive city staff, and we now have a 5-year rolling forecast for our annual budget, and we've been able to keep our millage rate the same. This is the 3rd year. We're hoping to do that for at least another 2 years. And we have the great benefit of having other funds that we can pull from for other services around the city. If all of those programs that are listed on the screen had to be included in the millage rate would end up being 5.2534. So as you can see, we're very fortunate that we have other pots of money we can draw from when we have various projects we have to work on. Whether it's the police operating fund or fire operating or public works, we have what we call enterprise funds that basically fund in a separate pot of money for different projects around the city and different departments. The national recommended percentage of your general fund that should be set aside every year for reserve funds in the event that there's an emergency situation, such as a hurricane or other things like that, is 16.7% of your general fund. We had, unfortunately, as you can see, it's gradually gone back up in the past several years. For several years, councils before us had used some of the reserve funds to help balance the budget every year so that they could keep the millage rate the same. That didn't serve the city well, and we were in a dangerously low capacity for our reserve account. So over the past several years, we made a concerted effort to use some of the budget money. We actually increased the annual reserve account by 0.5% every year so that we could build it back up. And I'm very proud to say that we have made our annual reserve account this year in excess of the national recommended average of 16.7%. It's been a long time coming, and there's a couple of former council members in the audience who will attest that we worked hard to get it there, and we thank the current council members for supporting this as well. It's extremely important that we make sure that on a national level we are a viable city, we are solvent, and that we can move the city forward because we have those reserve funds in an account that basically can't be touched other than to use it for emergency services if they're ever needed. So we will have actually in excess of the 16.7% this year. Some of that will be used for one-term projects and will never go lower than the 16.7% at this point. So a very, very, very big deal. You can see that there's a whole lot of activity that's been going on. I'm sure that as you drive through Punta Gorda, you see a huge amount of construction. These are some of the projects that have been ongoing over the past couple of years. We have several single-family permits that never ceases to slow down. And I'll get to another slide in a minute that'll share with you some of the build-out percentages of the various residential communities around the city. Single-family permits continue to be at a pretty high level. Multi-family permits, we have several duplex projects underway around the city. There are several in Burnt Store Isles and also PGI. If you drive around, as an example, there's one series of duplexes being built on Madrid, which is right directly across the street from where the public shopping center is at Burnt Store Road. And there's some on Magdalena here in Punta Gorda Isles. So they're all over the city. Commercial buildings, we have a couple of commercial buildings underway. We have the rebuild of the Johnson Taylor Funeral Home. We've had a couple of commercial build-outs, and those are all ongoing projects that will continue until those are finished. Some of those are rebuilds from Hurricane Ian. In the case of the funeral home, for example, that's one of the build-outs that is going to be up and hopefully back in service later this year. And I know he's very anxious to get that open as well. So these are the current build-out numbers as of December 20th. PGI, 95.1% build-out. It's growing by leaps and bounds, and we are very, very close to maxing out all of our vacant lots. Burnt Store Isles is at 91.9, and Burnt Store Meadows is at 83.9%. We're going to add to this chart next year the historic district as well, because there seems to be an awful lot of construction going on in the historic district. Unfortunately, there were just a whole lot of things that got in our way to add that to this list this year, a lot of which has to do with all of the Hurricane Ian restoration. So this is our mission, to preserve and enhance Punta Gorda's identity as a vibrant waterfront community, unique in character and history, and as a desirable place to live, work, and visit. That is our motto that we work by and live by. So we'll start with some of the projects that were completed in 23. You can see these on the screen. We got a new Christmas tree. Finally, we got a new Christmas tree. And then squirrels didn't get into it this year, which was fun. The police department got a new boat, and that's being outfitted right now to get that in service. We replaced all the channel markers that were taken down from the hurricane. And I'll get to it in a minute, but Hurricane Ian has pretty much devastated most of the cities in Southwest Florida, and we are certainly among those. We'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. We finished the Gilchrist Park Harbor Walk improvements that have been ongoing for the last several years, and you can see some of the other things on that list. So Hurricane Ian has just really done a job on us. We have at least 3 satellite offices right now that have to be used because our buildings at City Hall and the City Hall Annex have been taken out of service while we get repairs done on them. And we're not making it up when in our newsletters every week we talk about the fact that we have to wait for FEMA. Every community in Southwest Florida is experiencing the same problem. If we go forward and fix some of these projects, and we don't wait for FEMA's approval and written sign off, the taxpayers will pay for it because the FEMA will not reimburse the city. So that's why some of these things are not done. And believe me when I tell you, we all share your frustration on some of this. We'd love to have everything fixed and back in place, but we just can't do it until FEMA signs off. We've had a consistent issue with FEMA. They meet with us every single week. Our city staff diligently meets with FEMA every single week. And every time they agree to approval of a project, somehow or another, then somebody else comes in and takes over that account, and we have to start all over again. So it's very frustrating, but we are working on it. We just, 2 weeks ago, signed off on a contract to do the restoration of the utilities and the public works campuses. So that's going to get started momentarily. We have contract bids out right now for the City Hall Annex building so that we can get City Manager's Office and the Urban Design Department with code and zoning all back in that building. So there's a whole lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that you don't see, even though it doesn't look like anything's happening right now. A lot of waterway issues occurred because of the hurricane, and we had a lot of channel markers that were taken down, pilings that were taken down, all kinds of signage that had to be replaced. So that is mostly all done at this point. The waterway debris was a massive, massive amount of work. We had outside contractor that worked with us on that. And we also had a group of boaters from Punta, Gorda Isles and Burnt Store Isles who actually went out in their boats with sonar radar detectors to actually look down in the water to see where there were large objects underwater. So they identified where things were so that when the barge came through to clean up all the waterways, they could actually locate each piece of that debris that was identified on those radar sonars. One of the projects we did at the City Hall complex is the Government Center fence. This is a fence that we installed on the east side of the the City Hall complex. We had a lot of people who were parking in that parking lot that's our City Hall public parking, and then they were walking through our bushes and our shrubs and tearing things up pretty badly. So we put up a security fence to try to stop people from going right through that, and now they literally have to go around it. And that's because they were accessing restaurants and other things that are on the other side of that fence. Last year we annexed property on Cooper Street. This is on the south end of where the Public Works complex is. If anybody knows where that is, it's at the very south end of Cooper Street. It's currently vacant property, and they just annexed that last year into the city. We've completed the Gilchrist Park Harbor Walk improvements. That was done in many stages. And we finally have completed all of that, and now we have the on-street parking as well as off-street parking. We did some improvements to the road and the crosswalks, and it looks very nice now. This was part of an agreement we made with the Trabue family several years ago after the sale of the Fisherman's Village land to the city, from the city to Fisherman's Village. And so we finally got the plaques put up as part of the finishing touches on Gilchrist Park. These are things that are going on at the Ponce de Leon Park. We've repaired the boardwalk, the east and west fishing piers, and they're now all reopened as of last week. The last segment of that is reopened. And there's our beautiful new Christmas tree. So here's the police department's new boat, and it is currently being outfitted so it can be put in the water, and that'll be used for the volunteers who are city police volunteers and who maintain a little semblance of order on the canals for us. Another thing that was funded by grants, we have an incredible grant writer at the police department, and she writes grants for us all the time. She saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars, not the least of which was the body cameras that our police officers wear. That was funded mostly by a grant. But this was a project that we wanted to get done for the police department, and this is to enhance the interview room for when they have to interview people. Another thing that was really important was we have a lot of residents on West William Street that were having a difficult time going from their apartments or their houses up to 41 where all the stores are, where they could access stores. We put a sidewalk in there so that and that's also ADA compliant, so that was a project we had committed to do with our 1% sales tax funds. Every year, the city goes to the legislature, and we make a presentation to the legislative delegation. These are the three projects that we've asked for funds for this year with the legislature. We'll be doing a wastewater treatment plant upgrade to allow us to completely use all of the intended facilities at the wastewater treatment plant. This is something we have to do because we will reach 75% capacity of the wastewater plant in the next 5 years. So we're asking for funds to help support that. We are talking to Charlotte Park, and City Manager Murray actually had his first meeting with the residents of Charlotte Park last week to talk about the possibility of doing a septic to sewer conversion for those properties there. And we've also asked for funds to help support the Hurricane Ian seawall repairs. We had 7¼ miles of seawalls that fell in Hurricane Ian. We had a lot of seawalls that fell after Hurricane Irma, and we've done those repairs, but that project is not yet complete, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the Hurricane Ian seawall repairs, we expected at least to have FEMA sign off for 75% of the cost of replacing those seawalls, and the state for another 15%, which still leaves 10%. And this would help fund the 10% so we don't have to further assess the residents. So the septic to sewer project is mostly, if you look at the red, pink, and yellowish colored areas, that's all of Charlotte Park. There's approximately 1,400 properties in Charlotte Park that are all on septic. We know that a lot of those septic tanks are older and they probably are having issues. A lot of properties are on waterfront, so we want to ensure that we have no spillage going into the waterways and the estuary. So it's going to be a national mandate before too long that all properties will have to convert to sewer from septic. So we're trying to be proactive. We will not move forward, I'll be really clear on this, we will not move forward on this project until we identify a substantial amount of funding for it, because at the moment it would cost each property owner $30,000 or more to convert to sewer. So we're trying to identify some funds. We do have some funds that we received last year from the state legislature to get it started for design and engineering, and we're hoping to get more funds, as you saw on the legislative priority list. So we're going to keep moving forward slowly on this one and keep identifying sources of funds that we could identify to make sure that we soften the blow a little bit, because even vacant properties in Charlotte Park would have to pay that money if it goes forward. So we have the 1% sales tax program countywide, and that funds a ton of projects for both the city and the county. The city is the only incorporated city in the entire Charlotte County, so we are approximately 10% of the total population of the county, and we get a fairly substantial amount of funds from that pot of money, and we fund a lot of infrastructure projects with that money. We actually still have a couple of projects that are hanging over from the earlier 2020, it would have been the 2020. It expired in 2020, and then it was renewed by the voters in 2020 for another 6 years. But these are the projects that were listed for our 2020 to 2026. It's actually 26, and it'll be rolling over into 27 because we always have projects that roll over from one voting session to another, and this is extended every 6 years by voter approval. So we're getting ready to approve the 100% plans for the City Hall restoration project. This has been something we've been talking about for many, many years. And unfortunately for everybody, and I'm not just talking about the city of Punta Gorda, every city and every county in the entire country right now is experiencing such massive increases in costs for construction and something as simple as windows or cement or anything. I mean, anything that goes into the projects is incredibly more expensive than it was 3 or 4 years ago, and especially since the hurricane. So our costs have increased. Let me be really clear about this. No taxpayer ad valorem dollars are being used to fund this project. The project is being funded by 1% sales tax funds, some insurance proceeds, some of the money that was still in an escrow account from the Fisherman's Village land sale, and there's ADA funds and a couple of other pots of money that will all cooperatively fund that project. It is not going to be taken out of the citizens' ad valorem taxes. That's a very important statement that a lot of people are misrepresenting on social media, and I want to really be clear about that. But this is something we have to do. A City Hall is indicative of what kind of a city we are and what we want to be. And we have to first of all fix the historic part of the building that is crumbling in pieces, and there was not enough attention paid to it for many years. But also the City Council chamber is not ADA compliant, it is not security compliant, and it's entirely too small and inadequate from a technological standpoint. So in order for us to build something that we can use going forward, and have seating for an adequate number of people, if we took the current current city council chamber that exists today and we made it ADA compliant and security compliant, we would be able to seat 18 people. And that is not okay. We frequently have at least 3 times that for our council meetings for the most part. One of the projects that we have currently tabled is the restoration of the A.C. Freeman House. This is a historic home that was deeded to the city many years ago, and nothing has ever been done to it other than to put an ADA ramp on the back side of it. It has a lot of problems because it had water intrusion in the building when pipes burst inside the building and in the ceiling. So there has to be a lot of work done on it. We have currently tabled it because the project, as you can see, has now gone over $2 million. And rather than move forward and not have an identifiable intended use for it when it is fixed, we have said, let's mothball it for the time being. We can always come back to it another time when we figure out what the intended use is going to be. And if an organization in the community has the desire to possibly take possession of it and restore it, then we'll be happy to talk with them. At the moment, we can't allow anyone to go in the building. It's just not safe. So it's been covered up, basically, and we're going to mothball it until we can identify what we're going to do going forward. We do have grant funds that we received from the state that are in an account waiting for us to use. And what we'll do is use those funds for at least closing it up and sealing it up so it's secure for the moment. Once a year, we have an agreement with the Seminole Railway that we will restore the crossing area that, where our streets cross over the railroad tracks on the east side. This year, it'll be the Elizabeth Street crossing, and the funds are generated out of the general fund budget. We are working still, and hopefully this will be done this year. This has been a project that's been on our wish list for all the years I've been on council and beyond. On the east side, we have a community in the Boca Grande Boulevard area, which is, for all those who are familiar, it's over near where the Habitat for Humanity offices are. We have a lot of properties that are in a very low-lying area, and those properties flood sometimes all the way up to the front doors. And this is one of those mitigation projects we're working on for properties that happen to be built at low elevations. But there's a lot of young families with children over there, and we made a commitment several years ago that we would move forward on this project. It involved having to purchase a lot of vacant land. We had a couple of pending lawsuit issues that evolved from all of that, and we now own all the property we need. So there'll be a retention pond built as part of that, but that project is moving forward. We are going through the final permitting phase of all of that, and that project will hopefully get done this year. The Lashley Park Playground, another one of those projects that has been, it's been on the front burner for a long time, but we couldn't get a contractor. And every time we got a contractor, then something happened. And the last time we had a contractor, the hurricane happened. And then the contractor found out that they could get more money from another contract somewhere else, so they ended up backing out. Well, we finally have a contractor, and I'm happy to say that project is underway. It will be completed by May. We're at least hopeful of that. That is going to be a fun playground for the kids. It's all water-based playground equipment, and we're going to have a bucket that drops water on people's heads, and Vice Mayor Dryberg has offered to let people dump water on his head when we open it. So I hope everybody comes out and tries that. So that's going to be fun. We ordered the equipment a couple of years ago so that the costs could not continue escalating on us for that portion of it, and the equipment has been stored in a facility for us. And the contractor is getting ready to start doing all the installation of all of that stuff. Every year we have to continue doing ADA improvements for all of our city assets. Everybody who owns a business around here knows that you have to comply with ADA standards for all of your facilities. Excuse me. And so every year we put a certain amount of money aside in our sales tax fund project, pot of money, so that we can make sure that we have additional assets that are made ADA compliant who were previously not so. One of the projects that may or may not end up moving forward, this is the project I referred to earlier. This was actually approved with the previous 1% sales tax blush through from, it would have been 2014 to 2020. And we had a lot of setbacks with this because we had to get approval and right-of-way approvals from all of the property owners that are adjacent to this. This is the street that runs alongside of the Ice House Pub and where Manitou's Pizza used to be. In that whole strip, anybody that drives through there knows that it's not in very good condition. It's kind of sloppy and nasty, and especially when it rains. There's no official parking spaces there, but people park all over there anyway. We talked about cleaning that area up and putting sidewalks and crosswalks and additional parking and just sprucing it up. We're still having final permitting issues with some of the property owners there, so that may or may not move forward. If it does not, we will go back to that project list from that sales tax fund list of projects, and we will use those funds for another project that was on that list. When you approve 1% sales tax projects, you approve a specific, as a voter, you approve a specific list of projects that are outlined to be done within the city, in this case, the city. And so if a project doesn't get done and the funds are still there, we have the opportunity to roll those funds to another project that's listed in that project list. So going back to Hurricane Irma, for those who heard me speak last year, this has almost been a joke. Hurricane Irma, we lost a whole lot of seawalls. And we very quickly, in about 18 months, we restored all the seawalls. As part of the approval, FEMA came back and said they wanted us to install riprap, which is basically crunched up pieces of cement. They wanted us to install riprap in front of all the seawalls. So we said, okay, and they offered to give us funds to do that. And we said, okay, except that we had to go to the Department of Fisheries. And anybody that knows the federal government knows that no two agencies talk to each other. So we waited for 4 years, I think it was close to 4 years, for the permit from the fisheries. We got the permit from the fisheries, and now FEMA had to sign off on getting us the money. So we're still kind of going back and forth on that, but we did get FEMA to approve the project, so we're waiting on the funds for that. And there will also be funds that have enough left in it to use the riprap for the new seawalls that are being restored now. We did lose some of the seawalls that were the new Irma seawalls during Ian. So now we have to put those seawalls back up, and then we'll put riprap in front of those as well. And here's the other part of that, which is the Hurricane Ian. And we're currently restoring 7¼ miles of seawalls from Hurricane Ian. We're at 20.1% done. And it's going a little slower than we'd like it, but it's going. And we have 3 contractors out there currently doing seawall restoration for us all over the city of Punta Gorda Isles and Burnt Store Isles. So this is the project we talked about earlier, the wastewater treatment plant improvements. We have some money that was appropriated last year from the state, and we are asking for additional funds this year, which will hopefully continue us moving forward on this project. That is, all of the utilities for water and sewer are funded by a separate enterprise fund. So that project is going to move forward using those funds and any grant funds that we can accrue from various sources. Since PGI is now 95.1% built out, we are looking to build a spoil site channel to permanently be able to stage the barge that does all the seawall restorations. And that is not just for hurricanes, it's for any seawall replacements. They have to have a place where they can dock the barge, and they can load and offload materials, and they can park it when there's no vacant lots to continue parking on. So now that we're less than 5% vacant lots left in PGI, we're going to have a place to store the barge when it's not being used. So we're waiting on permitting for that to move that forward, and I just spoke to the engineer last week who applied for the permit, and he said it could be a while, but the permits have definitely been applied for. And in Burnt Store Isles, we have similar situation. Burnt Store Isles, we cannot bring the barge in to do the seawalls in Burnt Store Isles as a whole barge. It has to be brought in pieces because there's a lock there that used to have a lock on both sides. Several years ago, they took out one side of it, and now this year, the other side is going to be taken out so that it's a wider channel for the barge to be able to get in as a whole barge and access the Burnt Store Isles channels. And we'll have to eventually locate a site for being able to stage the barge in Burnt Store Isles as well. Those are both funded, by the way, by canal maintenance assessments for both PGI and BSI. So those funds come out of those pots of money and nothing else. Every year we do swale improvements for various properties around the city. We have a number of properties that, as the wonderful grass grows here, you know, up north we called this stuff weeds because we didn't like this kind of grass. But this grass grows kind of sideways and in all kinds of wonky ways. And so what happens is when it grows, it turns into really thick thatch, and then we don't have proper drainage from one property to the next. And as newer properties are being built, they're being built at higher elevations, and so we have this uneven way of water flowing into the sewers. So we frequently have to do swale drainage improvements on properties that meet a certain criteria. The city staff goes through the city every year and takes videos 72 hours after a storm and determines which properties are not draining properly and the severity of them. And then they review the videos, and that's how they establish the properties that will be cleaned up in that particular year. So our wonderful assistant city manager and our executive assistant in the city manager's office handle a lot of communications for the city. Melissa Reichert especially takes care of all of our public relations and marketing efforts for the city. She does a lot of publications, and she makes sure that we're visible in a lot of locations, the chambers of commerce, the airport, hotels, and various places around town. And so we have some various publications that we produce every year, or she produces, I should say. She does it all, I don't do it. And so we have a brochure called the Welcome to Punta Gorda Life. And also she also makes sure that all of this information is published on our website, and she takes care of all of the social media postings and other ways of making sure that the city is out there in front of everyone. Additionally, we also have a weekly news report that comes out of the city manager's office. The city council members then take that information and turn it into a newsletter format for everyone to read. I think we all have a pretty substantial list of residents who receive our newsletters. And if you want to receive any of ours, please reach out and we'll be happy to get you on the list. This is a project that Melissa put together, I guess it's 2 years ago now. It's called Text My Gov. You send a text, you send the word hi to the number on the screen, and you put a question in, or you have something you want to report, and it'll automate an answer for you. And if the automation system can't respond, it forwards it to a city staff member who can then respond to you. This is very actively being used by a lot of folks around the city, and it's a wonderful addition to all of our communications. And that's all I have. Anyone have any questions?